We're gonna be talking about that if you can't read titles. Hello everyone, welcome back to Easy Mode. This is the second Easy Mode, and we're gonna be discussing the PlayStation 2. Right. So a little bit of background on my background with the PlayStation 2. The PlayStation 2 was my first home console that I really got into. The N64 was the first one, but I want to let everyone know that the PlayStation 2 is really where my love for gaming really started, really fostered, because of course I was playing my DS a lot, my Game Boy Advance a lot, but the PlayStation 2 is really kind of where this all started, right? And so I've, for the past 3 years, been on this game collecting kick, as we like to call it. And it has led me to a lot of great PS2 games, a lot of great PS2 titles, in addition to the titles that I've gotten as a way to kind of restore my childhood, right? And why do I bring this up, right? Why talk about the PS2 in the year of our Lord 2024, right? Well, I think it's because of just the overall retro, what's the word for it? Revival. Very, 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 very original, I know. The retro revival that's kind of been going on among the younger generations, especially now that we're realizing that a lot of the things we grew up with are very old now, just to put it bluntly. And, you know, who doesn't like going back and looking at memory lane from time to time? Of course, I very much am into modern stuff, as you can kind of see with the main media shelf I have here. But I very much also enjoy retro stuff now, which has been very weird, honestly, especially for how I look at my progression as a person, my progression as a gamer, and how that all really fits in, what exactly that means. But that's a topic for a different time. Now, I'm just going to be talking about why I think the PlayStation 2 is cool, starting with the actual console itself. Now, the PlayStation 2, right, that I'm holding right now is the fat version, it's the big one, right? And this version of the PS2, I think, is the more iconic one. I personally had a Slim growing up, and I enjoyed my Slim a lot. I'm actually getting a Slim later on. But the bigger PlayStation 2 is one that I kind of have enjoyed seeing on my shelf recently, and I very much like its aesthetic, its vibe. I got this 3 years ago. Overall, I would say that I was able to clean it up pretty well. It's pretty clean on the front, a little bit of dust because it kind of sits on the home theater station, and I have to dust my electronics a little bit better than I normally do. But it's in pretty good quality. I got 2 memory cards at the front over here. And overall, I think that even though it's bigger and it's known as the bigger PS2, it is the original one. And I think that they did a bang up job with the design of this thing, right? Especially just the lettering, just very futuristic, very clean. Especially if you look at some of the advertisements for the PlayStation 2, which was discussed in the recent Pause Menu podcast episode. If you want to check that out, there'll be a link in the description. But we talked a little bit about the advertisements that they did back in the day for the PlayStation 2 systems, and overall just consoles in general and just games in general, and how they were just a lot more creative, trying to be a lot more futuristic. It's where a lot of internet-focused drum and bass gets their aesthetic from, and I think the aesthetic is super cool, and it has led to me appreciating the PS2 more for being a huge inspiration for that aesthetic. The PS2, unlike its competitor, the GameCube, only has 2 ports here, but as somebody who grew up just with, a younger brother of just 1 year, these 2 ports were all I needed. These 2 ports were all I needed for sure. And also just growing up in Nigeria too, I didn't really have that many friends who really wanted to come over and play video games. So, yeah. Another cool thing about the original PlayStation 2 is that you can flip the logo if you're standing it up like this, which I just was like 30 minutes ago. You can flip it like that, so it's in line with everything. Or if you're doing it this way, you can flip it like this, and I think it's kind of cool. So, but yeah, the PlayStation 2 is a pretty nice, sexy console. And I like it. I like it a lot. But that's enough about the actual, hardware, right? Or I guess the design, as I would say, because I didn't really talk about specs or anything. What about everything else that's the PS2's got going on? Well, we've got its controller, right? Which, if I unwrap this, like I should have beforehand, we will see that the DualShock 2 is very similar to the DualShock 1 in terms of its overall form factor and features, right? And I really appreciate that, especially because looking at a company like Nintendo and how they change up different controllers based on the consoles that are coming out, sometimes it could lead to people feeling kind of alienated by the things beforehand. I know some people felt alienated jumping from the SNES to the N64. I wasn't alive at that time, so I wouldn't know. And I feel like there was kind of a little bit with that jumping from the Wii U gamepad to the Switch, even though they are very similar in form factor if you're playing them portably. But I appreciate the fact that Sony has generally kept this form factor the same. So until they got to the DualShock 4. Now, the DualShock 4, in my opinion, is one of the greatest controllers I've ever held. The greatest being the Xbox, but the Xbox One's controller. But that's besides the point. Moving forward, though, I would say that overall works pretty well. My controller is slightly damaged, if you can kind of see the nub being a little open. But I think that the controller is very well, fits very nice in your hands. I know some people hold their controllers in a very different way compared to others if they want to do the claw shape, which I kind of do, just with my thumbs doing all the work. It's worked out great for my thumbs, yeah. Or if you want to do stuff like this or like this, it feels very unnatural to me, but how you always handle these things. Yeah, so the DualShock 2, it impresses. It's a little more of the same, especially if you grew up during the PS1 or PS3 era, but it's cool. It's definitely a step up from the DualShock 1, but it's not wireless like the PS3. So that's kind of the main issue here. So, but fantastic controller. And one thing to mention too is that you can actually get these things wireless, just based on the wireless adapters that they now have available. So it's pretty dope if you're looking to pick up a PS2, right? Speaking of looking to pick up PS2s, if you want game recommendations. Now, in my honest opinion, licensed games were much better back in the day, right? So before I jump into the actual recommendations for games I think you should seriously play on the PS2, I want to go over some games that I really liked growing up. First one being the Avatar: The Last Airbender licensed game based off Book 3 called Into the Inferno. Now, Into the Inferno was definitely something that they were leading up to, because for Avatar Book 1's game sucked. Especially going back and replaying it, I was like, this is not as good as I thought it was. But Into the Inferno is definitely a lot more fun. The mechanics feel way more fleshed out. Game looks way better too. Yeah, THQ, they definitely stepped it up here. Next up, I've got Ben 10 Protector of Earth. Now, the Ben 10 series has spawned a lot of games, right? But I still feel like none of them have really held a candle to Protector of Earth. There's, of course, Ben 10 Alien Force, there's Ben 10 Cosmic Destruction. There's a lot of different Ben 10 games. And as a huge Ben 10 fan growing up, and even still right now, it's been fun to go back to a Ben 10 game and have fun, actually. And not just be like, well, it's from the childhood, so I just enjoy it for what it is right now. But Ben 10 Protector of Earth is definitely, it's been a blast to play. And it just really makes you feel like you're Ben 10. Just to get my inner IGN out there. So, next up though, I've got Nicktoons Unite. Now, Nicktoons Unite is a very interesting concept. What if the 4 most popular Nicktoons at the time were teamed up, right, in a Smash Bros. esque crossover, not in a fighting game sense, but more so in they interact with each other in a Smash Bros. Brawl Subspace Emissary sense. That's a better way to put it. And teamed up together, they discuss things together. They actually acknowledge each other's existence. It's not like we are doing 4 separate storylines, 4 separate things. And it's a fun concept, but it's not really that great in terms of execution. But it's it's definitely one of the better licensed titles, especially as a Nicktoons offering. I also have Nicktoons Battle for Volcano Island, on this bad boy right off the shelf here. And I also greatly enjoyed this game a lot. It's definitely more polished than Nicktoons Unite. I think one thing you can kind of notice out of a lot of these different licensed games is that as they kept going, they definitely were like, all right, let's step up our game here, which I don't think you can really say about a lot of different licensed games today. So that's something I greatly appreciate. Following that, I got Disney Pixar Cars. Now, the Cars films, right, are some of the greatest pieces of media we've ever experienced in the history of mankind. And because of that, you just know it had to get a PlayStation 2 game. Greatest Hits Edition, especially. And looking back at it, I think the thing that surprised me the most about this game is that it had free roam, which is really just insane to me, how you were just free to drive around the map, do challenges however you wanted. They really could have phoned this in. They really could have. The Cars brand, it basically prints money. And the fact they were like, let's make a fun game. Let's throw in these Piston Cup races, these road races. You can get a good amount of time out of this game, actually. Not to say it's amazing, but this is definitely a game where, I mean, if you want to go back, check out how things were back in the day and go, yeah, they did this and it was actually pretty good. It's on Steam, which is really crazy to think about too. I mean, although what's not on Steam nowadays? Yeah, just discard that comment. Good game, in my opinion. Definitely worth at least checking out. Next up, we've got Bakugan Battle Brawlers. Now, Bakugan took the scene by storm back in the day, right? And the thing about the Bakugan game is that it was very simple to understand. The anime was very interesting, and also the games that spawned the first series of Bakugan, right? The first series, of course, there's New Vestroya and Vestroya Destroyers or something or whatever, but the first series spawned some amazing games. The DS game was good. The Wii game was especially good because of the Wii's motion control, so it felt like you were actually throwing your Bakugan. And just looking at this, I was like, yeah, it still holds up. It's still fun. It's still engaging. And that's something that I absolutely loved as a kid, and I still do now. So yeah, Bakugan Battle Brawlers is definitely something to check out if you are into very Pokemon-esque teenager, is into a sport that involves other type of animals or creatures, blah blah blah. If you're into like that type of sub-genre thing, Bakugan is definitely the thing to check out. And next, I've got Shrek 2. Now, when you're making a video game based off the greatest animated sequel, honestly, the greatest sequel of all time, you have to really come with your A game. And I think Activision kind of did that, especially because as I play this game, right, or as I played it, not currently playing it right now, I realized that it's fun for a little while, for sure. And even as you go in deeper, you're like, all right, I enjoy this part, not really enjoy this part. It's something that, as I look at the game, right, and as I look at how kid me approached the game, I was most likely just going with, hey man, it's Shrek, right? I love Shrek 2. I want to play through the Shrek games and through the Shrek movies. What better way to do it than Shrek 2 on the PS2? It's not bad, but it's not really gonna leave anybody impressed, if I'm being honest. So, but definitely one of the better licensed games when you look at the bar for it. So, but that's enough license crap. That's enough license crap. What about the actual games, the substantial games that the PS2's got that you may be looking to pick up Well, have no fear, because Ganache is here. So, starting this off with our hefty list of titles, we've got Kingdom Hearts. Yes, I'm recommending you Kingdom Hearts in 2024. Now, Kingdom Hearts is a game that's gotten a lot of flack, and for pretty good reason most of the time, honestly. Its timeline is confusing. Some people find its premise to be kind of stupid. You can't really just get into that, especially when you look at what Disney is right now. But I find Kingdom Hearts to be kind of heartwarming sometimes. I didn't get super far into the game, about 10 hours in. But Kingdom Hearts definitely left me very intrigued, interested. I thought its premise was kind of cool, honestly. Combining a Square Enix narrative with Disney characters wasn't as jarring as I thought it would be. And I feel like that's something that, I feel like Kingdom Hearts is one of those things where you should at least get a taste, right? Like, if someone's giving out free samples of something at like your Sam's Club, you get like a free sample and you're like, oh, okay, I don't want to buy $20 worth of that, but thank you. Maybe just give Kingdom Hearts a sample, right? And you'll be like, I don't want more of the Door to Darkness and all that, but thank you for the 10 minutes. That was cool. That was not bad. Next up, I've got Sonic Riders Zero Gravity, specifically Sonic Riders Zero Gravity. Now, this is the second game in the Sonic Riders sub-series. There's Sonic Riders Zero Gravity, and then the third game, which shall not be mentioned. And Sonic Riders Zero Gravity, I think, is Sonic Riders, but better. I know a lot of people prefer the first Sonic Riders game, especially some of my friends. But I really prefer Sonic Riders Zero Gravity. This is the one I played first, and I'm just keeping it 100. I think the tracks are cooler. I think the aesthetic is cooler. I think the graphics are better. Everything to truly enjoy. And I think it is one of the, if not the best, Sonic spin-off of all time. And if you're a Sonic fan like me, I think you'll greatly enjoy playing Sonic Riders Zero Gravity, because it's awesome. It's just cool. It's just coolness, right? Sonic doesn't need a hoverboard. Sonic doesn't need blah blah blah, but he's got this, and it works. It works. So next up, I've got Ratchet and Clank 1. Now, Ratchet and Clank is a series I got into on the PS4 with the remaster, or the remake. The remake. I got into Ratchet and Clank with the remake, right? And even though the remake kind of tones down certain aspects of the first game, such as kind of like the dialogue and character interactions and things like that, I had a blast playing it. So much so that I became a Ratchet and Clank fan. And Ratchet and Clank, the original, is something that I'm glad I went back and experienced at least for a little bit. It's fun. It does feel a little dated at times, but for you to go back and look at a premier Insomniac franchise, I don't think you'll really regret that. I think that it's a fun time to be had by all, and you'll be able to see why Ratchet and Clank has stood the test of time compared to the rest of the games that are on this list. Which there are three of very, very similar vein. What could those be, right? Those are the Sly Cooper trilogy. Now, if you've been on this channel for more than 5 seconds, you can probably guess that I like Sly Cooper. And Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus, Sly 2, and Sly 3 are all amazing games to play in succession. I've got a couple friends who've played them. My girlfriend's currently playing them in succession, and I just think that they're fantastic games to see in a different era where 3D platformers were king. This was a neat little one, pretty niche, not very popular, but it was there. It was there. It was a fun time. It was critically acclaimed, and I don't think you'll personally regret going through and picking these up again. So that's my personal state. And to kind of wrap this up, I want to give three games that I am very excited to play eventually, once I get around to them, once I get back to my PS2 phase of gaming. And those three are Dark Cloud, Katamari Damacy, and Gran Turismo 4. So there they are. And as I look through this, right, it's kind of made me appreciate how far we've come as an industry, right? Because looking back at the PS2, you always go, oh man, like this is it, this is the pinnacle, this is where graphics are at. And I remember when the PS3 and 360 were coming out, and I wanted a 360 so bad, even though I was PlayStation for so long. One generation, I was PlayStation, but that's back when the console wars were popping. And then eventually the PS4 and Xbox One came out, and that was just a huge feud going on, right? And then the whole time you got Nintendo on the side doing their thing. And I think that the PlayStation 2 is definitely something that is worth celebrating in terms of how it has propelled gaming into the medium that it is today, especially with the DVD player bundled into its actual, system architecture, because that really helps people be like, oh, I do need a DVD player, but I guess I could pick up a game or two, maybe pick up some FIFA, Madden, etc., blah 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 blah, and I'll be all good, I'll be straight. And I think that's something that we really don't think about often, because of course we're blessed to have gaming be such a huge medium that we're like, all right, different celebrities recognize this, I recognize this, my friends recognize this, my parents recognize this, blah blah blah. But there was a time where people didn't really think you could pause that online game. Like, people thought you could pause an online game. There was a time where games weren't really as widely available. There was a time where people who play games were just seen as like, oh, okay, you're just in this one specific niche. And I think the PS2 was the step to change in all that. This bad boy sold 155 million units. And as I've gone through and played it, especially more and more as the years have rolled by, it's definitely very easy to see why. Bars. So, that's the end of this video. Let me know what you guys think. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. But overall, I do want to start a discussion. So let me know what you guys think about the PS2. Are you guys interested in getting a PS2 in 2024? Have some of you been playing the PS2 in 2024? Maybe you guys have been playing other retro consoles. Whatever it is, just let me know. I am always excited to just have a conversation with people about video games. With that being said, thank you guys so much. Check out the Pause Menu podcast, which is hosted by yours truly. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time.